I hope you're all doing good. Good morning to all those coming in from here in the US, and good evening for all those connecting from India. Yeah, I mean, we just came up with this idea. Most of from what I see in the attendees list, most of you probably already know either me, Satya, or Jamin from somewhere. But otherwise, just to give you guys a quick introduction, I am Nitin Reddy, co-founder and chief growth officer of Finstack. And just to give a quick brief, so we are a tax and accounting compliance platform for US businesses. We help US businesses with everything, right, end to end, in terms of what a CPA firm does, right, from incorporation of entities, bookkeeping, accounting, payroll, taxes, all tax and accounting related compliances, dashboards to make life easy for you, CFO advisory, and stuff. And uh, yeah, so a quick brief is I've always been a sales guy. Sold rooms, sold natural stones for a living, and then entered this field with Finstack. Journey has been great for the last 2 years, and why I love what I'm doing, and the whole point in doing this session primarily is I had no clue about doing a business, or being a part of a business in the US, and what all is involved around it. And I had all these 100,000 questions in my head, which I figured out in my journey with Finstack. And during our time in the last 2 years, we have observed and we have spoken to hundreds of founders who come up with very similar questions with regard to uh, being able to incorporate in the US, the taxes there, what is the legal implications when you're doing a business in the US. And we just thought maybe we should have a session where the simplest of the possible questions that usually come in could be addressed, so that founders are more confident in their approach and more prepared when they're already either wanting to start off or already doing a business here in the US. And so, yeah, we have two amazing people with us that are going to help us with this. Uh, they're the smarter ones. They're the ones who know how things have to be done, and they're going to advise on it. But a quick disclaimer before we start off is whatever we are giving here is opinion, and it's not a direct tax or legal advice that we are providing you. So, I mean, you're free to consider what we are talking about, but don't take that as something from coming out from a rule book, and just go about with it. Yeah. So, yep, we have Satya with us. Satya is basically the brainchild behind Finstack, and let him introduce himself. Satya, yeah.
So hi everyone, thank you for joining. I'm CPA and a CA from India. I have 20 plus years of experience in accounting and the tax compliance field. We started Finstack 2 years ago. The whole idea is to help founders to navigate through US tax and compliance challenges through technology platforms. So that's what we do with Finstack. And of course, for today's sessions, we will discuss everything that a founder needs to know about SaaS tax and legal compliances. With that introduction, then I'll leave it to Jaman. Jaman, please.
Thanks, Satya. Thanks, Nathan. Hi, everyone. Jayman Chabda here. I'm the founder and managing attorney for Chabda Law. So I was a attorney and partner at a different firm for about 12 years, and then started my own practice about 2.5 years ago. So I'm a fractional general counsel for technology companies and healthcare and manufacturing companies. Most of them have an international presence, and then throughout the life cycle of the companies, they all kind of have the same issues. So whether it's raising funds, starting up a new venture, M&A, trying to figure out what type of entity to start, all those types of things that a company would need kind of are similar those types of industries. So look forward to a fun session today, and back over to Nathan.
Thanks, Eamon. Quick fun side about these two. So if you want to get some more time when you're talking to them individually for your work side of things, you can talk a little bit about history, and that will get Satya excited and will give you more time on your questions. And with Jamin, he's super good with his food choices and recommendations. So yeah, that's something you can definitely talk about to get them more involved and get more answers out of them whenever you are talking to them individually. Otherwise, very easy to reach out to. They're both on LinkedIn, and you can just connect there. They're quite active. They'll reach out to you as soon as they can if you're actually connecting with them and coming up with queries offline here from here. So quickly moving on into the session, we are gonna cover, very, like I said, very basic ones. And just to give you guys a perspective, this is going to be more of a conversational session that we want to keep it as. It's the first webinar for us at FinStack that we are doing, and we really want to do it the way we do our regular calls. So it's going, but like I said, we've kept the attendees on mute for now, but we're going to try and open that up during Q&A, depending on how many people are coming in. Just to give you an overview on what we're going to talk about, the first major thing, it's going to be structuring, because that's one question that's very commonly coming our way. Post structuring of your entities, we're going to talk about taxation in SaaS. Uh, just to give a perspective, there are 50,000 tax and accounting compliances all put together in the States. And what applies to whom and at what level is something I think even Satya is not sure about in the back of his mind when it comes to it. So that's where we all come in, work together, and whatever we're building on is driving in the days to come. Then we're going to talk about the hiring side of things. R&D credits, the most talked about hotcake topic right now in this area, where everyone's talking about how to save money through R&D taxes. But there are certain implications and a lot that goes about it, which we're going to discuss. Stock options, because yeah, we never know when we're going to really get big, and it's always better to have it all planned right from the beginning. And yeah, key legal aspects when you're going for a funding round. Again, a lot of questions that come about in this space. So we're trying to cover as much as we can in basic level for that. We'll quickly move into structuring part. What are the key considerations that you should be taking while structuring your business? So should your entity be a holding company or a subsidiary company, right? This is the first question that comes in with most founders that are talking to us. So Satya, I think we'll start with you on this, and please help us.
So actually, it is not only holding company or subsidiary. So there is a third option which one can do as a separate entity altogether. It need not be holding company of the India company or subsidiary of the foreign company. So there are three options. When any company wanted to incorporate in US, it can be holding company directly. Promoters are going to be the shareholders, and it can be subsidiary of the foreign company if it is, let us say, our clients most of them are from India. So if they already have business in India, they can incorporate it as a subsidiary here in US or a separate company altogether. So out of these three, it all depending on case by case basis. There is no fixed formula. It all depending on the business operations, and primarily we need to consider purpose of the entity as incorporating the entity in US. So that is the first consideration. If your ES entity is only to get customers and to get revenue from ES, then straight away we can go with a subsidiary route. There is no need to incorporate that as a holding company, because subsidiary is altogether a simple form of incorporating a company in US. Or if the business wants to go for investment in US, or they wanted to have exit in certain period of time, or some company wanted to have operations in multiple countries, wanted to have a holding company in US, or founders wanting to move to US. If these conditions are met, then certainly having holding company is something that business can evaluate. So, and a separate company also, that's also one more choice. But linking the two companies is always recommended from a fund point of view, from an investment point of view. So this is the overall view on this. Mainly from a business consideration point of view, that we need to take a call on this. When it comes to the tax side, there won't be much of a difference, because If you have a company in US, then you pay taxes on the profits of US company after doing transfer pricing adjustment to foreign company wherever you do the operations. And if it is a foreign company, then you pay taxes in that company in that country. So taxes wise, there is no much implication. Whether it is a holding company or subsidiary, it doesn't matter much. But it is purely business considerations like purpose, investment, stock options, how to plan your business going forward. So this is the main criteria to in order for us to decide whether a company is a holding company or subsidiary in US.
Yeah, I think
So
you've covered a little on the tax part too, but before we jump into that detail, Satya, the very basic thing that starts about, I mean, the few key questions which could more be like rapid fire is, do I have to reside in the US to start, incorporate a US entity in the first place? That's something very commonly coming in. And the next thing that comes about is, should I have a US resident or a citizen as a partner in my entity in the first place to even open a, it could even be a subsidiary, not necessarily a holding company, any sort of an incorporation in the US. I mean, if you could just quickly, give us the pointers on that, that would help.
So, in order to start a company in US, there is no mandatory requirement of a founder being in US, a resident of US. Anyone in the world, anywhere in the world, they can start a business in US, incorporate in US, and you need not have any SSN number, no residential status criteria. So, sitting in Africa, Australia, or India, or anywhere, you can start or you can incorporate a company in US.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Uh, I'll now move to Jamin and ask him the more critical, again, commonly asked questions. So the best state to incorporate Jamin and the type of entity. That's because is Delaware the go-to place for everybody? I mean, I personally feel Delaware is well marketed. I would like to take your opinion on that when it comes to choosing it as a state for incorporation. Uh, but is Delaware LLC the go-to kind of an incorporation that everybody should be doing? Because most of the time when newly incorporating founders reach out to us, they start off with yeah, we want to register a Delaware LLC for us. Not like they're like so sure about it from all the information that comes from the web or opinion that they hear from people. But what's your actual take on, what is the best state for incorporation and what's the entity type that one should go?
Yeah, that's a good question, and you're right. They are well marketed. The reason people incorporate in Delaware is because the corporate laws are very friendly, right? So if there is a founder from India that wants to come over and do it, they can do an LLC or a C corp, and register in Delaware. And if it's a technology-based business like most of our clients generally are, then it's okay to have it in Delaware or Nevada or Wisconsin, and they don't have any state taxes. I think I can talk about that a little bit more. But if it's a brick and mortar type of business, let's say you're a medical professional and you want to come over and you want to set up your urgent care practice in Virginia, Georgia, Texas, wherever. If you set up in Delaware, you will have to then be a foreign entity in the other state where your brick and mortar business is. So if you set up in Delaware and your actual business is in Georgia and you're transacting business in Georgia, your home state will be Delaware. Your foreign registration will be in Georgia. So it's not necessarily always the go-to place, but it depends on the type of business, and that's how we have to recommend based on the type of business it is. Because there's no point in having two registrations when you only need the one, right? And then to your point about the second question about the type of entity, um, there's essentially the two big ones are LLCs and C corps, right? And from the legal perspective, the liability protection is the same as long as it is registered and set up properly. And what I mean by that is making sure that the company is registered in the correct place, that the documents are done properly, that the company is adequately capitalized, that the bank account is set up, the EIN, etc., and all of those types of things are set up and a corporate formation is done properly. From the legal liability perspective, it'll be perfectly fine if it's done that way. But the kind of the key differences are there's a lot of flexibility in LLCs. There's only once a year you have to pay the fee, and that's pretty much it. You have to have the operating agreement, and whoever the members are, it's perfectly fine. It's not impossible to raise funds through LLCs, but sometimes outside investors like the C corp aspect a little bit better, because if the LLC, if something happens to the members of the LLC could terminate. Whereas a C corp, the shares are easily transferable and it's perpetual existence, right? That's kind of the big thing for the C corp. The downside of the C corp is there's a lot of maintenance. I'm sure Satya will talk about the double taxation for the C corps. But there's unlimited growth potential, and when the companies have a C corp because of the number of shareholders and that type of thing.
Awesome. And you've rightly directed it to Satya again, because I feel he personally is a big fan of C Corps and pushes for them. But coming to the tax part again, like Jamin was mentioning, Satya. Uh, again, most common reason people come up with when they say we're going with a Delaware LLC is because, yeah, there's no taxes there. Even like how Jim rightly mentioned, be it Nevada or Wisconsin, the primary reason people uh, talk about is taxes. How big of an impact is the state tax laws having on incorporating an entity there? Like, could you just elaborate a bit on that?
So there is a lot of misconception about the tax implications in the states where they say that there is no income tax, right? So Delaware and some other 7 states, they don't have income tax at the personal level. So there won't be any personal income tax. Business income tax, yes, certain state they don't call it as an income tax, but there is something called a franchise tax or gross revenue tax and all. So, for deciding the state of incorporation, taxes should not be much of an impact because anywhere that you incorporate, whether it is a Delaware or Nevada or any other state, you need to pay income tax in the states where you have operations, either through employees or through customers. Just merely incorporating in a tax-free state like Delaware or Texas, that doesn't mean that you don't need to pay any taxes. You have to pay taxes as long as you have customers in another state or employees in another state. So tax should not be much of a consideration there, because literally you will not be able to save any tax as such by incorporating in one state versus other. As Jaman correctly mentioned, so if someone has a brick and mortar kind of a business, it is straight away incorporate in that state. There is no need to go to Delaware. There is no need to go to Nevada, Texas, or any other state. Or if someone is starting new company, a founder from India is starting a new company in US, and he doesn't have any office space, no employees, just incorporating for the purpose of the customer. Then we recommend to go with Delaware or any other state because, again, as Jayman mentioned, the flexibility of laws, and Delaware has a separate court system to handle corporate litigations. And investors also wanted to go for Delaware C corporations. So this is the reason that people go with Delaware or any other state. But tax is a least consideration for deciding a state of incorporation.
Awesome. So putting it all in a line for you guys, yeah, incorporation, and what kind of entity it's going to be, either holding or subsidiary, and the state of incorporation. Everything depends on the simple points like the nature of your business, and what kind of people are involved in it, and are you going to be having a physical office in the US or not? Are you going to have a team here or not? Where are your clients based on? So there are a lot of factors that kick in, and just don't go by hearsay opinion, and go and incorporate entities. There are a lot of other things that need to be taken into consideration. Awesome. We'll quickly move into the next topic. Taxation. So Satya, I'll just leave it completely open to you. There are a couple of points listed there, but as much as you want to talk about it, because the deadlines are soon approaching, and I'm sure most of the attendees here are there to understand the tax side of things for their businesses at this point.
Sure. So any business, whether it is a SaaS or any other business, whether service or product, or just kind of a manufacturing business. So there are four levels of taxation that is applicable in US. One is income tax. Income tax, again, it is at a federal level and state level. And then sales tax. Again, sales tax is at a state level in US. It all depending on the business nature of business. That is the second one. And third one is payroll. Payroll taxes. If business has employees, then payroll taxes to be payable at a federal level, state level, and sometimes city and county level as well. And then fourth one is city and county level business license and property taxes. So these are the four kind of taxes that are applicable in US. So some of our clients are most of our clients which they miss is city and county level taxes, where that is also one important complaints that we need to take care. So especially when it comes to SaaS, because that is the point of discussion here, income tax is going to be the same across businesses. There is no specific or special taxation for SaaS businesses as such. So income tax, again, it has to be payable at federal and state. And the state, again, depending on where the business customers are located and where business employees are located. There is something called a sourcing rules. Based on that, income tax needs to be payable in each of the state where company has employees and customers. I mean, the topic is very detailed that we can cover in any other webinar. So income tax is same for SaaS business. So sales tax is one area where SaaS has a different application in comparison to regular businesses. SaaS business is evolving again. It is there, it has been there, but sales tax on SaaS is one is something that has been evolving across the states. Usually, typically, most of US states doesn't levy sales tax on the services. Whether SaaS is considered as a service or product is a big question mark. So, because of the ambiguity, most of the states came up with a separate rulings for SaaS businesses. Like New York, New York has a separate ruling for SaaS business. They say that okay, if it is a SaaS, then it is taxable. You need to pay tax, sales tax. You need to collect sales tax on the SaaS services that you are providing to the customers. And some of the other states are also following on the same lines. And now I think almost 50% of the states levies sales tax on the SaaS. Again, sales tax is not a out-of-pocket expense for the business. We have to collect it from the customers and pay it to the state department. We need to do the registrations based on the Nexus rules, and then start collecting sales tax from the customers, and then paying it to the state governments. So that's state tax implication. And when it comes to the payroll taxes, again, it all depending on whether you have employees or not. If you have employees, then payroll taxes are applicable. And there are based on the business, the place of business where the company has an establishment, like an office space or warehouse or any kind of a physical location that a company has in US, then in that location you need to pay county business license. You need to obtain for county business license, and if you have property, then you need to pay property taxes as well. So these are the typical taxes that are applicable for any business, especially for SaaS. It's a sales tax is a bit different, but otherwise it's the same. And some of the state, even though they don't levy income tax, they levy some other kind of a taxation that's called a franchise tax. Typically, Texas is one of the state, and which levies franchise tax based on the gross revenues that are derived from Texas state. And Washington state levies B&O taxes, business and occupation taxes. Again, it is based on the gross revenues that are derived from Washington state customers. And Nevada levies something called a MBT, modified business tax. and Ohio levies something called a CAT, Commercial Activity Tax. So these are the different forms of income tax based on the gross receipts, not on the net income. So we need to look into state specific regulations and whether a business have revenue in that state or not. So this is the overall broad level idea on taxation.
Awesome. So again, just to give you guys a perspective, guys, like Satya briefly covered on franchisee tax, B&O, and something here for Nevada as well. Like I was saying earlier, there are about 50,000 tax and accounting related compliances, and no one would really have them all on the back of their mind. But it's very important for founders to ensure that they are aware of what all kicks in for them. I mean, could be through consultants or self learning or reaching out to someone like us. But just to add to this, Satya, how important are city and county level tax implications, and what are the kind of what's the kind of attention it draws when we miss out on such such tax implications that come in? I mean, is it hefty fines or is it simple notices that come in? Is why I'm asking this is primarily everyone in this space talks about federal and state taxes and compliances, but nobody really talks about city and county in detail, or there is no mention of it, quite frankly, in most spaces. So, how important are they, and is it manageable if they've been missed out for a couple of years? Because there are quite a few founders who come to us after a couple of years of incorporation and doing business, and we realize there are a couple of city and county level compliances which they really missed out on. So, how wary should be about people taking care of these in the first place?
I would say city and county level compliances are as important as federal and state tax filings. The simple reason, I'll just give you an example. Say our we have an office in Loudoun County in Virginia State. So I'm sitting here. I'm working from this place. I need to take a permission from Loudoun County. It's called a business license. So unless I have that license, literally I don't have permission to do business from this location. So that is as good as like you have a permit for your home or permit for your car, license for your car. So so this is very basic and important thing that you that a business gets business license from the county or city where they're located. And on and above this, there is something called a property tax return filing and all that comes along with the business licenses. But business license is one of the major and important thing that we need to consider. Having said that, if someone misses out that, how exactly that needs to be taken care? Most of the cities are counties are flexible. As soon as you realize that you need to obtain a business license, you can go apply the county and say that from what date that you start having operations in that particular location, and then county usually excuses the delay and they grant the license. And across years, there are 3,000 plus counties and 19,000 plus cities. So each of this county and city has this kind of a requirements that a business needs to look into.
Awesome. So, everyone here in the session right now, if you have missed out on anything on your city and county level implications, please go back, check them out, and try getting them sorted as soon as you can. And just on the fun side, so how expensive is it going to be on the legal side, Jamin, if people are missing out on taxes and getting notices? How much are you charging them?
It depends how bad. I would say the only PSA that I have is to make sure that you do your beneficial owner information compliance before next week, the 21st, I think, right? That's the big one I would say right now.
And that has been changing every other week, so that's something
right. That's right.
definitely.
I'm waiting until the week before to get it done just in case.
Awesome. All right, let's quickly move to the next one. Yes. So the next big thing is about people hiring employees and how does it work here in the US. So like structure wise, most companies, most SaaS companies with foreign founders, primarily the ones that we are working with are from India, have an India office, have a US office. Structurally, could be the ways holding and this, but a lot of questions come around on hiring resources here. Can we hire everyone here on contract basis and manage it, or can we not really have a resource at all here in the first place and maintain everything from the back office in India? And uh, so, Jamin, what are the key legal issues that should be considered by founders while hiring in the US? Because it's
Yeah.
not very similar to India, I suppose. So,
Yeah, no, this is an important one, right? Because to your point earlier, a lot of founders at the early stage, instead of hiring employees, they'll hire contractors, and so the distinction between the two is very important. And I have a very simple example. If you have a leak in your kitchen, you would call a plumber to come fix the problem. You wouldn't give them the materials, training, um, you tell them when to come, when to leave, do all of those types of things. And so, at a very simple example, that's what an independent contractor is. It's somebody that comes in for a temporary purpose, for a specialized cause, and then you pay them without withholding any taxes, payroll, etc., and then they leave. Obviously, it's expanded to more technology use, and that the back office, the cost centers that are there in India, obviously that's there as well. But from the U.S. perspective, um, compliance with the federal and state, and even as Satya had pointed out, the local employment laws is very crucial, right? So the default rule is that if you hire someone, they're an employee at will, which essentially means that you can hire and fire them at will. You can terminate them for any reason or no reason at all, as long as it's not a discriminatory reason. And so then for a certain number of employees, 15 or more, the EEOC, which is the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, comes into play. There's also state laws around that as well that'll protect the employees from any discrimination based on race, color, religion, gender, national origin, etc. There's also wage and hour laws, which is the Fair Labor Standards Act, which has laws around the minimum wage, overtime, and child labor and things of that nature. So when you're hiring somebody that's, let's say you have an office, you have a physical office, and you have a manager level employee, they would be essentially there's two classifications on how we need to classify them, and that's under the FLSA, the Fair Labor Standards Act. So the exempt employees they're not entitled to overtime pay. They're generally provided under salary. So those would be the managerial employees that are there and they have direct reports, and they are not entitled to overtime. Then you have non-exempt employees that they must receive the overtime for hours worked in a 40-hour work week. So that's provided. It's state law specific, but it's also generally time and a half, right? And then I'm sure there'll be some questions around that, and we can go through that later on. The independent contractor and employee classification is the other one that I was mentioning earlier. Um, with the employees, that's FinStack will do, the whole thing is theirs, from A to Z in terms of the employees, including setting up for the payroll and withholdings and all of that. But the employees will receive a W-2, which has the wages that are earned and the taxes that are withheld by the employer. For the 1099, it's for the independent contractors, it's a 1099 form. So they're responsible for their own tax withholdings, and the misclassification of the employees is the big one, where the employers can get in trouble. Because if you have, to your question earlier, Nitin, if you can just hire all contractors, if everyone's doing the same thing, then it's going to be a problem. And the Department of Labor, if they do an audit, and all it takes is one independent contractor to go to the Department of Labor and say that ABC company hired me and they misclassified me, and they're doing this with everyone else. Big penalties and that type of thing. It's a significant issue. Um, so
awesome.
sometimes the recommendations is make sure that you have independent contractors for that specific purpose. Make sure even if you do a B2B agreement with them, like a services agreement with them, have an LLC. They can set up an LLC and you can do a B2B agreement. And then for the employees, you have a employment agreement, that's there, and you can have certain clauses for the length of time. It can be an at-will yeah, employment arrangement, but it'll still be an employment agreement nonetheless that has the non-compete provisions. Those types of things are state law specific. Let's assume we're not in California at the moment. But non-compete clauses, the termination, the benefits, all of those types of things will be there for surrounding the employees. And I will say one last comment about the employees versus the independent contractors. For an employer to hire an employee, the cost to the employer is about 30%, 25 to 30% of the employee's annual salary. In addition, that's the cost to hire an employee.
Thanks, Evan. That's a super important metric people should ideally keep in mind. If you're spending anything less, substantially less than that, then maybe you're missing out on some stuff. Please make sure you're checking it. And if you're going overboard there, yeah, probably you should just keep watch. I'll quickly add. I mean, I know we're not getting into immigration and that sort of stuff, but one quick question which very commonly that comes our way is, can a founder on H1 be on H1B in his own company and have his payroll running? So, any legal issues that they should be aware of in that kind of a setup, or is it fully fine? What's your take on that, Jamin?
It's possible. I think we have to speak with the immigration laws are changing all the time, right? And especially with the new administration and all of that, I think we have to be very careful and determine whether if that's possible, whether it's in the best interest of the individual and the company, because that could be detrimental if it's it's existing company, for example. I think there's other avenues that are there as well. So I think a specific, we can get into immigration. It could be a whole, day of
Yeah, I know.
immigration
I don't want
questions.
to go there, but
Uh,
this is one question that
yeah,
keeps coming.
understood. Yeah. So there's certainly a possibility there. I think it has to be tailored correctly.
Awesome. Uh, and now coming to payroll compliance requirements, anything that you'd like to add on that, Satya? I mean, any mandatory things that come in month on month that need to be taken care of? Satya, you're on. I don't know. We can't hear you. Could you just? Satya, you're not audible. Can anyone else hear Satya? Jimin, yes,
No,
no?
no.
No. Try mute and unmute again, maybe Satya. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, I think we can hear you now. Satya, say hey. No, I think we lost you again.
While Satya's doing that, I can
You want to cover on the payroll compliance requirements, Jimin, or we'll quickly come back here after, and maybe do the other stuff.
yeah, I think we can skip over to maybe the stock options one.
Let's just get to the next.
Yeah. And Satya, just whenever you no go.
Yeah, drop in and join back, maybe Satya. Will
Yeah.
awesome.
Perfect. Okay. So Nitin, if
Yes.
you're fine, we can do the stock options.
Yeah. Let's just go to the next one.
Yeah.
This will
Um,
have to wait for Satya to come in.
yeah.
Next.
So I'll
Awesome.
just cover, at a certain point, there are the companies often use the stock options to attract the talent, right? This is kind of a good segue from the employment perspective. So these are for generally for employees. It could be for non-employees as well. But what I'll cover at a high level is the options to attract and retain the talent, and then oftentimes our clients have employees in India, right, on the cost center side that want or they want to give them some equity on the US side. So how to do that as well. Hey, Satya.
You can hear me now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
can hear you.
Okay, sorry.
So
Sorry
we'll
for
finish
that.
this and get back to the other.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, Jeevan,
So
please.
yeah, so there's three big ones that I want to cover: the incentive stock options, the non-qualified stock options, and then the ESOPs, which is the employee stock option plans. So the incentive stock options, they provide the employees with the right to purchase company stock at a predetermined strike price. So and it's generally done after a vesting period, so that we can make sure that the employee knows what their cost is to exercise their stock options, but then also to retain them for a certain amount of time, so that vesting period is there. And the ISOs are unique because they offer the tax advantages that I'm sure Satya can then talk about as well. So I'll give you a quick example of all three of these as well as we go along. So employee at a startup has 1,000 ISOs with a strike price of $10 per share, and then a 4-year vesting period. So after 3 years, if they exercise the options when it's let's say 25 per share, they would pay that $10,000 for the shares that are worth 25, right? So they have that predetermined price already. And then if they hold it for 1 year, then they have, the tax advantages are potentially favorable for them for that sale as well. The company, excuse me, the company will have drafted the plan itself, so they can't sell it externally. And then, the buyback is there and all of those types of things. So all those considerations are kind of uniform throughout, so that you're not worried about the employees selling it externally to lose control of the company. And it could be a separate class of shares and whatnot as well. So then the NSOs, the non-qualified stock options, they offer quite a bit of flexibility. They can be granted to the employees, directors, contractors, consultants, and there's no specific IRS restrictions on the amount or timing of those. So they're a stock option that can be similarly between the exercise price and the fair market value at the time of exercise, and that's subject to the ordinary income on the tax side. So quick example on that, the company gives a consultant 500 NSOs with the exercise price of $15 per share. And then 2 years later, they exercise the options when the price is 30 per share. They have to pay that income tax on the $15 difference, which is, again, the compensation income that's there. But the difference between that ISO and NSO is just the flexibility on who can actually get it. And then a lot of people come up, and they want to talk about the ESOP plan, because that's like the most common one that people want to do for their companies. And that provides the employees the interest in the company, and they're typically, like, the finance team will want to align that interest with the company and the shareholders, and so that's kind of the employees and the shareholders are kind of aligned in that sense. So the company, let's in the example, company creates an ESOP plan based on the employee's tenure with the company and the salary. And each year the company can contribute shares to the ESOP trust. Then it's allocated to the employee accounts. And when they retire or leave the company, they receive their vested shares after a certain amount of time that they're there on their tenure. And then they can receive the vested shares or the cash equivalent, depending on what they want to do. I will say that each of these plans is very specific to the companies. Satya and I have worked together on many of these plans, but it's a very specific thing. We sit with the founders and the company's C-suite, depending on the level of companies, and certainly it's a very specific plan that we come up with. So no two companies have the exact same plan. And then just the last thing about issuing stock options to foreign employees. A lot of the clients here from India, or they have the presence in India. So it's completely doable for the employees in India to receive the stock options. There's just some compliance with the securities laws And then it's a bigger tax implication that we have to make sure from the India and US side to make sure that that's there. And some of if it's a non Indian owner and it's somewhere else, some countries have restrictions on foreign ownership depending on the type of industry as well. But generally, it's doable.
That was super detailed, Jimin. Thanks. One quick question on the last part that you covered, Jimin. So,
Yeah.
um, uh, I mean, again, coming in on the India-US bridge perspective. So, can a employee sitting in India or any foreign country for that matter have a considerable amount of share in the entity or shareholding in the entity given away in the form of ESOPs? I mean, is that legally good in all sorts, or is there anything specific that implies when, let's say, a decision making kind of shareholding is given out in the form of ESOPs to someone sitting
Yeah.
outside the US?
It's a good question. So generally on the ESOP plan, what we do is make it non-voting because it's a pool of it goes to everyone, right? So from the voting perspective, it would stay, let's say we have Class A voting, Class B non-voting. Class A would generally stay with the C-suite or whomever the shareholders are that are make the decision makers. From the Class B ESOP pool perspective, they would have non-voting, just equity in that particular pool. And then they can, yeah, there's no restriction on that because they, assuming that they pay their taxes, there's a reciprocal agreement there between the countries and all of that type of thing. Completely fine.
Perfect. All right. Let's just go back to the topics that we missed while Satya had some technical issues. So we're done with hiring and, yeah, the R&D tax credits. The whole world wants to talk about this, Satya. What's your take on this? Is everyone really leaving money on the table and walking away? That's what the whole marketing around R&D tax is. What's your take on it? Can really people save tons of money there or make tons of money there? What is it all about? It's
Barely audible.
yeah.
Can you speak up a little bit, Satya?
No, we lost you again now.
Had him for a second.
Is it audible now?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. This is good.
Yeah.
It's okay. 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 So sorry for that. I'm not sure what happened. Okay, with respect to R&D credits, it's very detailed topic and very important topic for the
Satya,
companies.
sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt you, but what is R&D tax credits? Let's probably start with that.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, sure. It's R&D is research and development tax credits. Basically, IRS, Internal Revenue Service of US, it's passed a regulation for the companies which are expending on research and development. So they are passing on some tax credits. So that's the whole idea of R&D tax credits. So for the companies who are spending a lot of money on the R&D, so whatever the expenditure that they incur on R&D, that anyway they can claim it as an expenditure and take as a deduction. But on and above, on the tax liability that a company has, they can get the tax credit as well. So it's indirectly in one way it is a double benefit for the companies and this is to encourage R&D in US. So that's the whole background of R&D tax credit. For any company which are spending money on the research and development, whether it is a software product development or any other new product that they wanted to bring in, so the expenditure that is incurred on R&D, some part of the expenditure they uh, can get credit, tax credit on the tax liability that they have in that particular year. So that's the whole idea of tax credits. But the thing is, any expenditure will not be qualified as a R&D tax credit. There are certain criteria, and you need to have a detailed documentation in order to support that you are meeting the criteria. The broad level points are like it has to be a new development altogether. It should not be the existing development, and it has to have a commercial viability, and you need to bring in and you need to incur the expenditure within US. If we are spending money on R&D outside of US, then you will not be able to get the credit for that expenditure. So if you meet this criteria, then at the end of the year, when you file the tax return, you can apply for the tax credit. So that's as simple as that. And for some of the startups now which are having revenues of less than $5 million, you can get the tax credit on the payroll tax liability that you pay to the IRS, up to $500,000. So this is one thing that a lot of companies miss out. You need not wait for end of the year to file the tax return. And for some of the companies, it's not profitable at all. It's loss companies. Then there won't be any tax liability at all. Then for those companies, how they will be able to get the tax credit? So that is through payroll tax credits. So if you have employees, then certainly you are going to have payroll taxes. So the R&D expenses that you incur, you can get the credit from the payroll taxes that you are liable to pay. So this is brief about it, but of course it's very complex and wide area. So I mean, if somebody is interested, we can discuss that in detail separately. But this is the fundamentals and basics of it.
Perfect. So, I mean, whatever I get paid for cannot be claimed under payroll tax credit benefits for R&D because I'm not doing any R&D. That's what it
Yeah.
is. Simply
Yes.
put.
And the R&D expenditure has to be within US. It cannot be outside of US.
Awesome. This is why just an opinion out here again, guys. R&D tax credits is being widely spoken about, and a lot of claims around it that there's so much money that you're leaving behind on the table. There's so much money that you could get back in form of tax. Yes, if it, I mean, there is a lot that goes into it, and there's a whole rule book around R&D tax credits. But it is something that needs to be explored by everyone spending time, money, resources into actually doing R&D. And if you're one of them, then please feel free to explore more in detail around this, and we can always help you when you want to get in touch around that. Let's quickly move on to the next topic. Stock options done, and yes, back to Jamin again. The legal compliances around SaaS, Jamin. So you have the pointers there. Maybe just cover them for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the big ones that usually come up are data privacy, the IP rights, certain contracts and things. So um, from a data privacy perspective, depending on where the company is, the CCPA in California is the big one here in the US, and that's kind of there. And then of course everyone knows about GDPR in Europe. But the contract should essentially assess and address all of those data protection responsibilities by the company. From the IP perspective, obviously the SaaS is in itself, and the license agreements as well. I think that's a big part of it as well. So um, the IP protection is crucial in the documents, right? So whether that's patents or trademarks or copyrights or whatnot, whatever it is out of those IP protections, they have to make sure the companies have to make sure that the IP rights are secure from the developers and the third-party contractors and all of that. So in those contracts, we generally specify the ownership and usage rights of the software and any other IP that's there with it. We define it's important to define the scope of the licenses that are granted to the users, including any restrictions on the copying and reverse engineering and distribution of the software. So these contracts that I keep talking about, they'll have the subscription terms, the SLAs, user agreements, and so all those liability limitations that are there as well in terms of the data security, if there's any sort of issue there. The contracts need to be reviewed properly, and then those subscription terms are very important, right? Because that's where the pricing model is, the billing cycles, the renewal terms, all of that. And the SLAs will essentially talk about the uptime guarantees that are there, the support response, who does that, and then the remedies for the service failures if there are any. Um, and I mentioned the liability limitations. That's there to protect the company from excessive financial exposure because it'll basically cap the liability there. Of course, disclaimer of warranties and then the termination clauses and all of that is there as well.
A quick question around like we've mentioned this repeatedly about the whole 50,000 compliances on accounting and tax. Any specific compliances, legal compliances that kick in year on year, or something that needs to be taken care of on regular basis that you would like to highlight on German, if there are any? Yeah.
Not really too many from the legal perspective. I think the big one is just making sure the company is registered and the fee is paid generally. But specific types of industries have their legal compliance. But from this high level, the legal compliances are minimal. It's much more on the tax side.
Awesome. And moving on, I think we've covered all that we wanted to at this point.
There's one point about the funding, Nitin,
Okay.
if we can cover that, just really quickly, I can just go over it if you're fine with that.
Yes, please.
Um, so this goes into, the from the startup to scale mentality, and then the types of funding. So of course there's bootstrapping, which everyone does in the beginning of just providing your own. And I hope everyone has their promissory note from their personal self to their company so they get paid back at a certain point. And so then you're using your personal savings and then reinvesting your profits and all of that. Of course, the advantage there is that you control everything because it's your own funds. Then second step is the angel investors. Obviously, they're capped at about 100 or so, 150, 200 the of ticket size. And then the good thing there is that money is generally easily accessible, but then who is it that you have access to through that angel group, right? There's a lot of groups that provide that mentorship, which is really nice at an early stage because they'll introduce you to the right people, will help you scale the company. Of course, then there's the VC route, and then before going to the VC route or at that particular time, we do a thorough tax and legal review to make sure that everything is done properly because they will likely want a C corp likely in Delaware, and so all the documents and the taxation and everything needs to be done properly. But that's essentially to then you're giving away a portion of the company to then get to that next level. Similar with private equity, and then of course there's always the instead of giving away equity, there's debt financing for certain industries, right? You can get an SBA loan, just conventional loan, convertible notes, safe notes, that type of thing as well. The safe note's not a debt, but still it's a convertible instrument, right? So that'll also allow the company to then retain that full ownership.
No, thanks for mentioning on the funding part, Jamin. Now, while you were talking about it, there's one thing that again we commonly get asked that has come about. So, a lot of times, I mean, even when we are talking to the companies that we are working with, we usually happen to recommend, a C corp when your long-term plan is to go for fundraising at some point. I mean, is that a legal compliance that is or I mean, why do investors prefer a C corp? Is it a legal liability on the entities to mandatorily convert to a C corp before raising funds, or like if the investors are okay with it, going ahead and raising funds on LLC is also completely fine.
It depends on the group that's investing, but generally they want a C corp because of that perpetual existence that I mentioned earlier and the
Right.
transferability of those shares. So then on an LLC side, if you have the members who are the owners of the LLC, if they something happens to them, then the company kind of goes down with them, right? Whereas the membership units are not transferable as easily because there's a whole probate issue and this that from the shares perspective, when we write it in there, for the investors, they come in and those shares are easily transferable, and the company will stay on no matter what, because it's a even though the LLC excuse me, is a separate entity, just like the C corp is, the transferability of the shares is much easier.
Awesome. Anything that you would like to add on this, Satya? Uh, Satya, there's some issue with your mic again.
Is this okay now?
Yep. What magic are you doing in that 10 seconds when you are before asking, is this okay, Satya? Every time you do that, you
I'm not sure. There is a microphone selection. I'm interchanging between those two. I'm not
okay.
sure why that is changing. Anyway, so when it comes to fundraising, a few things that we need to consider. One, at any stage, like a VC route, or any other kind of a investment route. So due diligence is one of the important thing. Financial and legal due diligence. So we need to have the proper corporate documents from a legal side, and tax compliances from tax and accounting side. So your books to be in order, your tax compliances has to be in order. So make sure everything is in order before even going to pitch into the investor. So that is very, very important, because if you have any gaps in the compliances, then that is going to affect your negotiations with the investors. So that's one important thing that we need to consider.
A broad level statement, if I were to make, guys, make sure you're sitting with your CPA and your lawyer for all the advice needed when you're raising funds, because uh, probably going and convincing someone who's passionate about what you're doing or interested in the field you're working in to raise a fund is way easier than the due diligence that kicks in to get that fund actually in place after that, after someone has given you a soft commitment or on an investment. So make sure you spend ample amount of time and in making sure your due diligence is all in place. And yep, I think we've covered pretty much everything. So we'll that we wanted to for this session. We will eventually do more sessions where we'll deep dive into any specific topics based on. We'll send out a feedback form along with what else is expected from your end for the webinars that we would like to do in the future, so that we try and cover just what you want to hear from us. Let's just quickly have a couple of minutes on the Q&A side. And a quick disclaimer again. So we're going to take only questions around business, SaaS businesses primarily, but businesses also in general on the tax and legal implications there. No questions around personal tax and stuff, please, because that's not in the agenda, and that is not something we are keen on covering today. We'll Ram Krishna had raised his hand early on, so Ramakrishna, maybe if you could just unmute and come up with your. And we have a couple of questions from Venkat, which we'll take, Jamin, that for you. Ramakrishna, I think you can try unmuting. Oh, so you just had a rain. That's okay. Yeah, I think Jamin's also addressed what Venkat's. Do you want to talk about that, Jamin, or just that's fine?
I think that's, I'm happy to do it. I think that's a better one situated offline, because that might require some more information. And I think that might be a Satya question as well in terms of the filing the taxes, right?
Yeah. Satya, if you see in Q&A, Venkat has a question. It's about how to structure the Indian entity if he's a citizen with top security clearance, currently having LLC filing taxes and escort in USA. Any generic stuff that could be covered around that, or do you want to take this offline? I would then request
I mean,
Venkat.
just generally at a very broad level, right? So what is the purpose again? If the India entity is going to do only the back-end services, then incorporating it as a subsidiary is ideal, or incorporating it as a separate entity altogether. Um, uh, and so linking the US entity and India entity as a parent and subsidiary is more relevant when someone is going to pitch in for the customers, and they can showcase both US and India as one unit, and the employee strength, the revenue strength, everything that they can showcase there. If it is a separate entity, that flexibility would not be there. That is one point. And second one is immigration point of view. If you have a parent in US and subsidiary in India, or vice versa. So you can bring in employees, at least top level employees, CX1 manager level employees, and L1 visa 2 years. If you have both entities linked, if it is separate entity, unless you have common ownership, then you will not be able to bring in employees on L1 visa. So that's another consideration. So broadly, these are the points. But of course, if everything is depending on case basis, so we can discuss if there is any specific questions surrounding it.
So one thing specifically that I'm looking for is Satya and team. Have
Yeah.
you guys dealt with people that have a security clearance and structuring the Indian entity? Because one of the challenge that we want to overcome is again when we go to the customers and clients, we want to make sure that we were able to project the Indian employees as well, so that way the number might show a big. And also we are planning on doing the R&D based out of India as well. So let's say that like, if you are planning on developing a product from India, we want to procure the rights for that. If we don't, if it is not a subsidiary of US entity, obviously we cannot show that as our product, right?
So I'll address the second question, Venkat. So R&D tax credit or an R&D expenditure. So you can take the deduction even if the R&D expenditure that's outside of US. But when it comes to the tax credit, the R&D expenditure has to be within US. If you have a subcontracting in India and if someone is doing R&D in India, you will not be able to get the tax credit in US. So that's the disadvantage. I mean, US wants to encourage the companies which incurs R&D expenditure within US. So that's the point there. And when it comes to security clearance, I personally think there won't be any issue of incorporating a subsidiary unless your department or whatever the department that you are working under, so they have any restrictions. So what I know is we work with some of the government contractors. So government contractors, they cannot have any employees or they cannot get the work done from outside of US. So even laptops are not allowed and everything is secured. So except for the government contracting thing, for commercial contract, I don't think having a security clearance prohibits incorporating a subsidiary in India. But certainly, I mean that is some specific issue we can talk separately.
Sure, definitely. And
Yeah.
other thing I heard is once we are only like, let's say we have an Indian entity, and that Indian entity we are transferring from funds from here, and they are working only for the specific US entity, then that will automatically be considered as associated entity by Indian tax department. Is that true?
So there is something called a POEM, place of effective management, from a
Mhm.
India point of view. So what they consider is if any of the Indian residents, it is not the vice versa, Indian residents, if they have a control in US businesses, then it is considered as a place of effective management, and you need to pay taxes on the US operations also. So that is there from India point of view. But otherwise, yeah, as long as you separate these two entities, and as long as you have a proper transfer pricing agreements, and as long as you have proper financial separately for the companies, then you pay taxes in separate company, I mean in the respective countries, and that's it. There won't be any linkage as such.
Any other questions coming in from the attendees? Anyone else that wants to? You can just unmute and start off. If you have multiple, we'll do one at a time and quick 2-3 minutes on each of them, and then we'll wind this up, guys. No more questions. Does that mean we have pretty much covered everything that you guys wanted to know?
Once again, thanks a lot for this session. This is a really insightful. I know, like we have people from different backgrounds. Satya is there from the accounting perspective, and Jayman is there from the legal perspective. This kind of things will definitely help the SaaS ones. Definitely, I can share that. Appreciate all the time, guys.
Thank you very much for all the nice words, Venkat. We're going to do more of these sessions. I mean, that's the first one for us, and I'm assuming we did a decent job in addressing the key questions that usually come our way. But yeah, like we said, we'll send in a feedback form. Do let us know what you guys think. Also, add to it on anything specific that you guys are keen on knowing more about, which probably could be done in a webinar. I mean, I'm anyways going to drop in Jamin and Satya's emails and their LinkedIn links in our next email or in the chat right here. You can reach out to them directly, schedule calls, and take things one to one if you have anything very specific that needs to be addressed immediately. And yeah, before we leave, there are a couple of deadlines that are very quickly coming in for your taxes. And we recently wrote about this as well. The 15th of every month is something that you should all be very aware of. There's a lot that happens around on that date, almost every other month. So if you're already working on any of these and need help, feel free to reach out. If not, just make sure you're getting started with these guys. March 15th is like the day after, and uh, just don't delay on your tax deadlines and don't keep them for the end. Usually what happens with us is we see a lot of traffic queries, everything coming in just about a month before or around that time during the tax season, and during the rest of the time it's more like, yeah, this is something that can be taken care of later. Let's try and avoid that. Make life easy for you, for the CPS working with you, for the teams that are helping you out within your office. Let's just make sure you're not missing out on these deadlines and make life easy and business more effective. Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. It was an amazing session. Thanks for staying and hearing us out. Like I said, I think we've covered most of what we wanted to, but please feel free to share your feedback once we send in the feedback email. Thank you so much, Jamin. Thanks, Satya, for all the time. And we would love to do more of these. And we'll have more people coming in, and we'll try and make it more entertaining so that it just gets keeps getting better in the coming days. All
Nitin,
right.
are you guys
Thanks, Nitin. Thanks, Satya.
planning on
Sorry.
sharing the recording as well?
Yeah, you'll all be getting a recording of the session as well.
Are you guys planning on sharing the recording?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, that's gonna
Sure.
come.
Okay. So thanks.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.